Well, good morning, good evening, good night, good grief, wherever you are. My name is Willie Lawson. This is the Morning Report for the weekend, for Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going to do a brand new morning report on Monday, I promise. It has been kind of crazy, and I am nothing but thumbs up to the people on YouTube, you folks on YouTube who can do this every day, or even people like I was watching a little bit of The Mind of Jamal, who do this every weekday at at 10:30. Jamal is on, and Jamal is is firing on all cylinders. It takes a lot. It takes a lot. So if you can support any of the YouTubers that you really like, or any of the people like us, Paul and I here on Fight Back Media TV, please try to support us however you can. We appreciate it. I mean, and what we're asking to do right now is just share the crap out of this, because this is going to be good stuff. All right, we're going to get started. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. We're going to talk about critical race theory. Why? Because everybody else is talking about critical race theory. We might as well let you know what the real deal is, right? And we're also going to talk about a poll that we found on Breitbart having to do with the defunding and of police departments and the budget of police departments around the country. It is not what the mainstream media wants to get out, although the mainstream media is part of the poll, so it's not information that they're going to push. You're not going to be surprised, and you should be encouraged by it. All right, let's talk about critical race theory. There's been a lot of talk about it, and a lot of lawsuits. The governor of Florida has banned critical race theory from being taught in public schools here, and once you learn what it is, you'll know that's probably a good idea. But the unions are fighting back. Teachers' unions are fighting back. Once they got their wits about them, their legs under them, they decided they could fight back. And this is something that I think is really, really important to learn. When we fight back, they don't expect it. They never expect a response, especially the sort of response that they would do. They would sue, they would protest, and all those things. And they never expect that from us. So when they got that, they were kind of stunned. So it took them a bit to get their story together, and we're going to learn what their story is. It's the same deal. And you've seen. We're going to play this video from this gentleman. You've seen it before because it's playing. Hang on a second, because it's playing everywhere on the internet. But I love the way that he puts it, and I love the non-emotional approach, and I love everything. I love everything about it. So I thought when I found it that I would share it here with you today.
My name is Ian Rice. I've got two children here at the Caledonia School District. It's very apparent here by all of the parents that have spoken that this board and the school district is failing. More importantly, I came here to talk about critical race theory. This theory was never meant to be brought into grade schools, high schools, at all. It's actually taught in the collegiate atmosphere, and more importantly, the legal portion of the collegiate atmosphere, to see different laws through the lens of race, from an ethics and an ethical standpoint, right? Not for grade schools and high schoolers. The problem with bringing it to high school and grade school level is that we don't have the educators to properly teach these kids. Instead, they're using it as their own agenda to indoctrinate the kids to hate each other. And whether you believe that to be true or not, the reality is that's what's happening. Critical race theory is teaching that white people are bad. That's not true. That would teach my daughter that her mother is evil. You already have an educator within your staff that has pulled my daughter aside and said, well, you're a minority, so you know better than to engage in certain things.
Wow.
Whoa.
When I was brought to the school's attention, nothing happened to the educator. Instead, my daughter was brought in, and she was ridiculed. So my question is now, with critical race theory being brought in, what is your criteria to educate the educators? And who are you to educate my children, or any of our children, in life issues? That's our job.
Yes.
Your job is to teach them math and science. Our job is to teach them about life. I believe racial issues and tensions across the U.S. are nowhere near what they used to be decades ago. Do we have a long way to go? Sure. Do we still have individuals out there that need to be taught? Absolutely. But I believe the people here don't look at me as a black man. They look at me as a man standing in front of you addressing the issue that we all are very passionate about.
That's right. That's right.
Well, again, I thought that he said that very well. I thought that he laid it out beautifully. And I like the end. The end is, who are you? And this is a question that parents need to ask school boards across the country. Who are you to teach my kid about life issues? Who are you? What qualifications do you have to teach my kid about life issues? Just because you may, your political agenda may not like the way things are going, or you may not like the things that I'm teaching my kid, you don't have. Where does it say that you have the right, the authority to countermand something that a parent has said? Now, I know, don't get stupid. I know that there are parents who are telling their kids all sorts of wild things that are terrible. I understand. And why? Because we live in a sinful, fallen world and people suck. But my time in the educational realm, my own personal time, I never thought that it was my position to countermand something that a parent had told a kid. That was not my position. It just wasn't my position. It wasn't my authority. My authority was very, very limited. And this is it's funny. It's like government. A government's authority should be very, very limited. No matter how important their task. Actually, the more important their task, the more limited their scope needs to be. And education has sort of run rampant with their scope being able to do everything. And a lot of it's our own fault because as a society, because every ill in the society, we want somehow it taught in school. I am sick to death, frankly, of hearing we need prayer in school. Well, who the heck's going to pray? Who do you trust to pray? Back in my day, we used to pray in school, blah, blah, blah. Well, who led the prayer? Well, my wife went to a teeny tiny school district, and the teacher would lead the prayer. Do you trust the teacher of your kids to lead them in prayer, especially in Christian prayer? Do you really? Of course you don't. So that's a responsibility that you always had. Seriously, if you want, and I'm going to be blunt with you. If you want to pray with your kids, you better pray with them before they go to school. You better lay down a covering of prayer for them their entire time they're in that building for those 7.5 hours. You better speak into your children's life. You ought to pray with them while they're sleeping. Because that's going to be the most effective prayer. Some half-hearted, written, nonsensical prayer that a teacher may read aloud at the beginning of a class period is foolishness. You don't want them to have that authority. We cannot be double-minded here. We cannot say we don't want you teaching on kids' life issue, but we want you to lead them in prayer every morning. You don't. So what the gentleman says about teaching our children life issues is correct. The school doesn't have any place for that. That's my responsibility. And just because a teacher or a school district or an administrator doesn't like what I've told my kid, frankly, it ain't none of their damn business. You feel me? It's not in their business. But in typical fashion on the left, they are using word games to combat what they never expected they would have to combat. This is the head of the, hang on a second. I hate looking away from you guys when I'm doing this, but my computer's over here. I don't have a nice monitor that's right here next to the camera so I can look forward the whole time, unless you want to help us out with that. I don't. And let me get the mouse up here and do that. This is the head of the American Federation of Teachers, and you can hear what she says about critical race theory. The beginning of it, the end of it.
Critical race theory is not taught in elementary schools or middle schools or high schools. It's a method of examination taught in law school and in college that helps analyze whether systemic racism exists, and in particular, whether it has an effect on law and public policy. But cultural warriors are labeling any discussion of race, racism, or discrimination as CRT to try to make it toxic. They are bullying teachers and trying to stop us from teaching students accurate history.
Poppycock. Poppycock. What you've learned, what you saw in both the clips is that both people agree that this critical race theory is a subject taught in law school. Now, knowing that, and that's true, let's talk about when a person gets to law school. A person gets to law school after at least 4 years of college, right? So you get in college when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. You're 23, maybe 24 years old when you enter law school, and this may be your second year of law school when you start talking about critical race theory. So you're going to be 25, 26 years old. What you're not going to be is 13. So this idea that you could have these kind of discussions on racism and bigotry and discrimination when a kid is 13 years old, as complicated and esoteric sometimes as these discussions are, that you can have these without saying that they're agenda driven and pushing a particular agenda, it's foolishness. And I don't care, you know what? And what she's doing is playing the word game. They're calling any discussion critical race theory, and that's not what it is. I don't give a damn what you call it. Call it whatever you want. Whatever you want. What you're doing, we're going to label that. We're going to label it this, so we all have an idea of what we're talking about, and then we're going to attack it. You can call it apricot race theory if you want to. I don't care what you call it. And we got to stop getting caught up in that. We got to stop getting caught up with however they define the argument. It's interesting. I was listening to a little bit of Mine and Jamal, and you can listen to Mine and Jamal on YouTube and on Facebook. It took me a while to figure that out. It's every night at 10:30. The Mind of Jamal. Just type that in, and you'll go to his Facebook page. He said something interesting that I heard from Andrew Breitbart years ago. Whoever discusses the terms, whoever has control of the narrative, is the person on the side that controls the argument. So what the left is trying to do now is they're trying to define the terms. And if we're not talking about the terms, then you know what, you guys don't know what you're talking about, because that's not even what this is. That's exactly what it is. It's critical race theory for dummies, and your kids are dummies. The 8th grader is a dummy. That's what we're talking about. Let there be no doubt. That's exactly what we're talking about. These very complicated, very sophisticated discussions about race, these very complicated, even esoteric discussions about racism and bigotry and discrimination are things that are best left to parents. Now, I'm not going to agree, me personally, I'm not going to agree with everything that the parent next door teaches their kid. But it ain't none of my business. I'm not going to agree with what the parent across the street teaches their kid. It ain't none of my business. The only business I have is what I teach my kid who's sleeping across the hall. That's the only business I have. And it's my business. It is my prime directive to educate my child. Now, if indeed I can partner with a school, yeah, that's better. That is much better. But the reality of the situation is this. It is my responsibility in total about the education of my child. It is not the school's responsibility. It is they have no other place than the place that I give them. And the place that I give them is math and science, grammar. Teach my kid to write. Teach my kid to read. Help me with teaching them to read and write. Help them with mathematics. Help them with science. Help them with science in its purest sense. Agendaless science. I'll handle everything else. I don't need you to pray with my kid. If I want to pray, if I feel like I need to pray with my kid, I'll pray with my kid. Thank you very much. I'll put people in his life that he can pray with. I'll put people in his life that'll teach him to pray for himself. He doesn't need a teacher-led prayer. It would be nice, and it'd be a warm, fuzzy feeling to have, Pastor so-and-so from the local Methodist church lead the invocation before the football game. That's a really good thing. Nothing bad about that. But I don't need that. Because my kid, when he went out in the field, he prayed before he went out in the field. And we prayed for him while he was on the field. We prayed for his teammates. We prayed for the kids on the other side of the field, the opponents. We need more of that. We got it. We don't need you to do anything outside your scope. Teachers aren't going to like it. But who cares? School districts aren't going to like it. So what? Teachers unions aren't going to like it. I don't care. Leftist politicians aren't going to like it. They're going to call us cultural warriors. They're good with the names. Golly, they're so good with the names. Yeah, but I don't care. And you shouldn't care either. You got to do the right thing. And you better do the right thing now. All right, we're going to take a little break. We'll be back with more of the program right after these messages. Well, hey everybody, my name is Willie Lawson, and you guys know that I do a lot of stuff on the internet, and you may think with what's happening on Twitter and what's happening on Facebook and what happened to Parler that the mainstream social media sources are really trying to rid themselves of conservative voices, and you'd be right. They most certainly are. But you know what? It isn't as bad as you think it is. It's worse. But there are people who are willing to be platformed for free speech. One of those places is freedomforum.website. freedomforum.website. You can go there and speak your mind. So come join us. Enjoy the freedom. Enjoy the fun. If you are a true blue conservative, small businesses are near and dear to your heart. They are the lifeblood of our life and economy. I believe this, and that's why my florist is not a website or phone number. My florist is Bloomingdale's Flower Shop, Tampa's premier flower shop. At 11618 North Florida Avenue here in Tampa, Florida, and at 6835 State Road 54 in Newport Richey. Call Christine at 813-933-1942 and at 727-232-6900. She can also be reached on the web at www.bloomingdays.com. One of the things that I get asked most is where can I get information that is not tainted with liberal bias, especially here in the Tampa Bay area. Well, now I have the answer. tbctampa.com, a website by and for Tampa area conservatives. Tampa's leading conservative voices speak freely at tbctampa.com, and you can too. So join the fun and enjoy the freedom at tbctampa.com. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report. All right, we're back. Thank you ever so much for your for your kind attention. My name is Willie Lawson, and this is the Morning Report, a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. If you go to fightbackmedia.com, there's a link in the middle of the page that takes you right to fightbackmediatv.com, where this video is going to be up, hopefully in the next little bit. We've struggled to do this, so we're going to make sure that it is available for you and everybody else, because that's what we do. There is the left is simple, and that's a really good thing that the left is simple, because they make themselves easily understood, and it's really easy to see what their plans are, because in their simplicity, they're not trying to hide much, or if they are, they're the worst at it ever. Not trying to hide much. They're just not. They are not. The LGBTQ plus community, an effort is an effort to soften the resistance to their lifestyle by going through your children, and they've done just that, because there is a natural thing between this back and forth between you and your children, because of generation, because of just the nature of tug and pull between that we sometimes have with our kids, and they've used that division to drive a wedge between you and your children, to make you look mean and unloving and uncaring, regardless of what you're actually doing for your kids. Right? You've seen this. And again, whatever they're talking about, so we're only talking about this. We're only talking about this right here. They're actually talking about that, all of it. They're actually talking about every bit of it. And this is on everything. This is with the LGBTQ community. This is with Black Lives Matter. This is with critical race theory. This is also with the Defund the Police. Remember the Defund the Police? Because they wanted to move certain amount of funds from the police department, the over-militarized police department, to more community things, to ultimately bring down crime and poverty. It's always for a good reason. They don't mean it, right? But the agenda is not to that. It's to remove policing. That brings in chaos and anarchy that the left can show up and squelch at some point with an iron fist. And that is the control they'll have, because the only way that you can be safe is inside the iron fist of an authoritarian regime, right? This is why the defund the police. This is why the cut the police budgets. This is why the demonization of police and law enforcement. It's the same thing every time. It was the same thing. It's over and over again. Like we've learned, in church that that Satan only has one tool in his little tool belt. It's deception. And it's a very effective tool. It's deception. But we're only talking about this. Right? We're only talking about this. When in fact we're talking about everything. Every time in the Bible man gets fooled, the devil says we're only talking about this right here. When he's trying to grab a hold of all of it. So there's nothing new under the sun. So we got to bring you these stories to hopefully encourage you. In a Breitbart story, in a Breitbart story, sorry, Bright, Light Bright. Remember Light Bright with the little pegs? Anyway, in a Breitbart story, there was a USA Today ISOP poll. USA Today, who would have thought? I'm sure that they didn't like these results. 77% of people polled actually do not support the defunding of local police and actually want an increase in police budgets and more police on the street. Now, it's interesting. Again, I hate to look away from you. I apologize. I'm looking for my mouse. There it is. I changed my mouse color to red. I maybe needed to change it back to black or whatever it was before. White was just too many pages with white backgrounds, just disappears. In this USA Today poll, it revealed that 77% of people, Americans, want additional police officers. As Democrats move to defund law enforcement while crime is surging nationwide. The demand for an increase of police officers and police budgets comes as Democrats have defunded police in major cities, including places like New York, Philadelphia, D.C., Baltimore, Los Angeles, Minneapolis, Seattle, and Portland, Oregon. Now, we also know, because we are not blind and we're not stupid, we also see what's happened in the past year in these cities. We see what's happened. In some of these cities, all hell is broken loose, right? And it's broken loose unabated. It is the chaos and anarchy that the left wants to bring to fruition. And they're happening in major cities because they get the major coverage, and it makes you think it's happening everywhere. And it's too big for you to stop. Well, it's not happening everywhere at this point, and it's not too big for you to stop. Simple things you have to do. Stop being so focused on Donald Trump being reelected in 2024. Be more focused. Do you see how they're keeping your attention on Donald Trump? Do you see how that's happening? How they're keeping your attention on Donald Trump in 2024 and taking your attention off 2022? Not so much the federal election, but the local elections, city council, mayoral elections, state legislature, governors. Because that's where your power is going to be. Making sure you have a city council that is not going to unilaterally decide to make your police department smaller and less effective. There's how you stop it. How do you stop critical race theory? We're just going to call it that. I don't give a rat's ass if they tell me that's the wrong term. I don't care. You show up at school board meetings, you make sure, like this man did, like what we watched a little bit ago, and make sure that they know that we're not having it. Be organized, be direct, but be strong. That's how we win. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. The Morning Report is a production of fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com, fightbackmedia.com. And on the fightbackmedia.com website, if you go up to the More tab and pull it down 1 or 2 clicks, it is the SwansonReport.net, the SwansonReport.net. My friend Paul Swanson, fabulous website, great commentary, great thoughts on everything that we talked about. You want to check that out for sure. So until we see you again, go out there and learn something, love somebody, and for goodness sakes, y'all take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye-bye now.